A big Thursday welcome into lcpioneers.com live, presented by PioStream, as we keep you connected with student athletes, coaches, alumni, and different members from throughout the Lewis and Clark College community, keeping you up to date 2 days a week, Tuesday and Thursdays now at 11:30 a.m. Pacific time on Facebook Live, and also available on demand on our YouTube page and inside the fan zone at lcpioneers.com. Hi, everyone. I'm Ryan Goff. I'm the play-by-play voice and director of athletic communications for Lewis and Clark as we continue our show now dating back to the last day of March 2020. So it's been over a year of live shows with you at lcpioneers.com/live. And of course, as I mentioned, YouTube page is youtube.com/lcpios. We are the Pioneers, just 6 miles southwest of downtown Portland, Oregon. Lewis and Clark competing in the Northwest Conference with 9 total institutions from throughout Northwest Oregon and the state of Washington, and a chance for our student athletes across the nation, over 430 institutions at the NCAA Division III level, a chance to compete on that nationwide stage. 2 guests on this Thursday edition. In a few moments, we'll bring in the softball head coach of Lewis and Clark, Shawna Cyrus, and then after that, we'll talk to the head athletic trainer and baseball alumnus, Jeremy Loew, on this edition of the show. It's really exciting to have Coach Cyrus, in fact, because they beat number 1 Linfield over the course of the weekend, heading into Pacific Lutheran, their series coming up this weekend. If you have any suggestions for the show, if you have any questions for either of our guests, we invite you to get in touch with us. You can do so in the Facebook Live comments. And of course, suggestions for future guests of the show, you can find that on our email address, sports@lclark.edu. We always like that input, of course. And then you can find us on our Twitter and Instagram. Go to LC Pioneers on both of those. lcpioneers.com is our website. I mentioned the fan zone. Just click on that. There's a link to lcpioneers.com live. But if you're unable to make it there, subscribe to our YouTube, and our last interview on Tuesday with Ryan Seibel, the junior, soon-to-be rising senior for Lewis and Clark men's basketball, is the latest episode there. All right, let's bring in our guest today, the head coach of Lewis and Clark softball. Again, on the heels of a pretty fantastic series this past weekend, we're welcoming in Shauna Cyrus to lcpioneers.com live. Thanks, Coach, for taking time for us on Thursday. I think your 3rd appearance on the show. So either way, it's exciting to talk to you because I said we're now in the crux of competition. I mean, you can't beat that. You have a chance to take on teams from throughout the Northwest Conference. The team's heading to Pacific Lutheran this weekend. I want to start with the Linfield win because that was significant, not only because of the shutout victory in the opener against the top-ranked team in the nation too, but it was a pretty outstanding performance all weekend long by your team.
Yeah, it was really, really fun to watch and be a part of. I almost felt like I was on the team as a player as we were beginning that first game because it felt like we were going into battle together. We were just all dialed in. Everybody was on the same page. Everybody wanted it. And so it was really, really exciting to see what kind of energy we were actually going to bring during the game. So, yeah, and we brought it. And it was, I mean, we just really shut them down. They had a couple chances to get back in the game, and we just shut that door. So it did. It really proved that we can play with and beat any team in our conference and probably out of our conference. Yeah.
Yeah, and I know you have your sights set on the tournament, which I do want to talk about in a moment. But one thing that stood out as I've watched this team so far through the 2021 season is there will be a game, maybe a doubleheader, where the bats really stand out, right? And then the next doubleheader, maybe pitching will show up. And then even sometimes you have a mix of players toward the bottom of the order who make some big plays. So I really see a holistic effort from this team over the course of the year. I want to start with the bats because, you know, Sydney Cross has been outstanding this year. Describe the big bops from your team so far this year.
Yeah, that's what we call them, the big boppers. They're really going hard. I mean, we talk about those big bops at practice a lot, and I, at practice I'm like, hit it out, go for it, let's do it. And maybe in the past we were more like, let's hit solid line drives, let's go for those base hits and keep those base runners. But I feel like in the last couple of years, I've really given them that freedom to go for it and hit it out. And you can really see the difference. They're really trying to hit it out sometimes, and I'm great with that. But yeah, Sydney is just on fire. She started this way last year until first she had an injury, a season-ending injury, and then COVID happened, obviously. But she was headed towards this trajectory as a junior. So as a senior, to see her just really blow it up has been so much fun to see. But there, she's really not the only one in our order that can really hit it out and consistently hit it out, which is really, really exciting.
Yeah, and then the pitching performances. You have Alyssa Abe now, who's had two Northwest Conference Pitching Student Athlete of the Week honors. And again, some depth there at the pitching position. What have you liked so far about the hurlers this year?
Yeah, absolutely. Abe has just been on fire. She's really, really dedicated to the craft of pitching. So, off the field, she is working so hard every single day. She loves the art of pitching, literally. And so she takes it very, very serious. And so it's really cool to see her, get awarded individually for her hard work that she puts in. But as a staff overall, they all throw differently, which is really great. They all complement each other. Abe works up and to the sides, and Jane works down into the sides. So, and they all have different speeds. So it's really, I think, nice that they all complement each other and how, we're going to attack another team.
And then I mentioned, I kind of, as I segued into this discussion, right? We lead with the home runs, we talk about the pitching. Now, how have you seen moments this year where it's been an entire team effort, especially 1 through 9 in the order, right? When have those moments stood out for you?
100% just happened when we beat Linfield. I mean, you never really know who is coming out hot any day. It might be the big boppers, it might be the pitchers, like you said, it could be anything. But the greatest thing about our team this year is how much depth we have. And so when our big boppers are not stepping up, other people are stepping up, like you said, the bottom of our order. And so that is the greatest tool that we have on this team, is that we know everyone's not going to be hot on every day. That's the goal, but we know that that's not realistic. And so it's been really awesome in that game against Linfield that we beat them. I mean, it was really some non-traditional big boppers that were just getting base hits with runners on base, 2 outs, and really feeling pressure. Cami Merrill, Lily Moffitt, I mean, they were just coming in, sack fly, whatever they needed to do to help our team. So I'm really just proud of all of them stepping up in different, times.
We're talking to the head coach of Lewis and Clark softball, Shauna Cyrus, on lcpioneers.com live. Good morning, Edgar, in the Facebook live comment saying hashtag Pios SB. This team has been so much fun to watch, and it feels like somewhat of a continuation of some of the early signs you saw prior to COVID last year. And you have your sights now set on the Northwest Conference Tournament top 4 teams that progress for that automatic bid. And Pacific Lutheran is a series this week, and I'm kind of looking at the standings, and I'm trying to kind of gauge some things. I imagine that this is a pretty big series with those aspirations.
It's really big. I mean, they're probably similar to us. So we, really have to go out and give everything we have, and have that same mentality we had against Linfield. Like, we're going into battle. And just let whatever happens, happens. And we need to figure out how to get everybody hot at the same time. And I think when that happens, because I don't think it's really fully happened yet, which is scary, because when it does, it's going to be unreal. But when we can get everyone hot, and we're hoping that's this weekend, I mean, we're going to be pretty on fire. So we're hoping that everyone can kind of step up at the same time.
Another thing that's been fun about this show too is we've had chances to talk to you in the past about describe the class that's coming in. Hey, what did you see in fall ball, right? And so now that we've had you maybe on for the 3rd or 4th time, we have a chance to actually talk about the performance of your first year students on the field. How have these first year students really contributed to your success so far?
Oh man, all over the place. It's been really, there's 4 of them, and they're all contributing all over the place. We've got speed, we've got pitching, we've got it's really everybody is just really, really contributing. Power. Sam Gildersleeve is hitting it. She can hit it out pretty easily, so it's going to be really fun to watch her grow. And then a newcomer who didn't really join us until almost February is Madi Alvarez. Didn't really know, she doesn't know anybody on the team, very new, doesn't really know our style yet. And she comes in and just is a firecracker. She's our hype man in the dugout. That's what she's known for. And right now she's our leadoff hitter. So if I don't think I would have expected that, but I love it. And so our freshmen are really contributing and really stepping up, and it's been a lot of fun watching them.
Now, we talk about this team and what's possible ahead of them with the Pacific Lutheran series. But I also think about the idea of the way that teams have kind of bonded because of COVID, the unexpectedness, being able to rally around one another. What elements of that kind of mentality have you seen come out, whether it's in games or whether it's in what now kind of seems like a non-pandemic schedule, right? We're back in that rhythm of practice. Even just ways that you've seen it maybe in the what is otherwise normal, right? What we were doing prior to the pandemic. Have you seen some of those bonding or resiliency moments come out with your team?
Honestly, I'm not sure if it was like COVID related that something, really happened because I was feeling it last year. But I think the big thing that we've taken away from COVID has been just being grateful to play our sport and be together. And I think when something like that, and Sydney going through a season-ending injury, when something like that happens to an individual or to our whole entire team, you really feel an impact and like, oh, I am really blessed to be able to play this sport with, my girls. These are my sisters. And yeah, when it gets taken away from you and you get it back, that's when it feels so powerful to be like, this is why I play. These are who the people I love and want to be with. And I think that passion just really kind of came out when you get something taken away. You can either just say, I'm going through motions, or we want more. Like, we're hungry. And the hungriness started last year with our seniors. And I still am in communication with them regularly. And I let them know that our team talks about them still. That they started the leadership process to get our team where we want to go. And now we're like fulfilling that.
Yeah, we've had some of your seniors from last year on the show before. I also have seen a lot of cool social media posts, including last week with the upset of number one Linfield. Saw a lot of stories on Instagram from some of your past players too, celebrating that success. The head coach of Lewis and Clark softball, Shawna Cyrus, our guest on lcpioneers.com live. Coming up later in the show, we'll have Jeremy Loew, the head athletic trainer. You can catch us live Tuesday and Thursdays, 11:30 a.m. Pacific time. Shauna, I'm curious, when you look at Portland and Lewis and Clark and all of the attributes that student athletes who choose to attend Lewis and Clark have access to, what have you seen with some of your recent graduates? What have you seen with some of your current players that really kind of shows all that stuff that you talked about during the recruiting process is coming true?
Yeah, I mean, right now we've got a couple of our players are getting some pretty big internships going on this summer, which I'm super excited about and proud of. All over the board. I mean, we're talking psychology, working in some hospitals, criminal justice, working with investigators. So that's currently happening. But the seniors that graduated last year, I mean, they got it going on. They left, and one's working in the lab, one is starting medical school, and the other one is starting graduate school for education. So they all jumped right into their career or, post grad work of what they want to do. And I'm really excited to just, see those girls move on and become women and jump into the career that they're excited about. And obviously Portland has really helped them grow in those lab works that they were doing prior, and all the internships that are available to them here in Portland.
Yeah, one of my favorite parts about the show is we routinely share some different things in the breaks, and one of that is Frankie Warden talking about how the Brown Bag Lunch Series helped Frankie quite a bit with research and through some of those things as you talk about some of the seniors that recently departed your team. Another thing that I think about too when it comes to collegiate athletics and aspects of Lewis and Clark is some of the things that maybe we kind of take for granted. I mean, we have the head strength and conditioning program with Ange Dendis, and then of course just athletic training. I've had some conversations with past students who said, coming into collegiate athletics, I never even thought about the dedication that comes out of sports medicine when you get into the collegiate world. And obviously with Jeremy Lowe coming up here in just a moment, Tara Boatman, Brandon, now the new athletic trainer, describe, those opportunities for student athletes to have access to such great professionals like the strength and conditioning coach and the sports medicine staff.
Oh, 100%. They're all over it. And to be honest, right now, our team's pretty beat up after this last weekend. I hope we're healing better now. But I mean, we've got sprained ankles, we've got bum knees, black and blue all over. And to be honest, like, they take care of us so well. Tara, played college softball, so she definitely knows all of our bumps and bruises. And Jeremy, also baseball player. So, we have a lot of help with them specifically. And just during all this COVID time, they've done such a great job, just helping me and making sure all of our players are checking in daily, and making sure we're all symptom free, and the testing, and there's just a lot going on. So I'm really appreciative of our athletic trainers right now.
Yeah, and I hear that all the time too from the student athletes. So you see that it's reflected in their opinion as well. I can't say enough about the work that your team is doing this year. I do hope the tournament is in sight. Clearly, it starts one series at a time, and that'll be Pacific Lutheran coming up this weekend. Head coach of softball at Lewis and Clark, Shauna Cyrus, thanks so much for joining us today on lcpioneers.com live.
Thanks for having me. Roll
Absolutely. Roll
Pios.
Pios. Thanks, Coach. Appreciate it very much. Yeah, this is a big series coming up. I mean, if you go to nwcsports.com, which is the website for the Northwest Conference, click on softball, click on standings, you'll see where Lewis and Clark lies relative to Pacific Lutheran. And if the Pioneers can take 2 of 4, 3 of 4 from the Lutes on the road, that could be a huge step in the right direction for the Pioneers to make it to the Northwest Conference tournament. But that Linfield series, we heard Coach Cyrus discuss some of the key moments against the top-ranked team in the country 3 weeks in a row, especially winning the first game of the series, which is significant in my opinion. That's the first time Lewis and Clark has shut out a Linfield softball program since 2002. So that's really a big deal when you look at it. And then on day 2, after losing the second game of the opening day, the Pioneers still dropped both of those games. You want those to be W's, but I will say the fact that the Pioneers had a lead late in one of those games and only lost by a margin of 2 runs and 1 run, again, to the top-ranked team in the country, that up until the point when Lewis and Clark beat them, had won something like 21 of 22 games against other NCAA Division III programs. That is not insignificant. So it was really a lot of fun to watch over the course of this last weekend. And with that said, now let's discuss some things that happened this past weekend and also take a look at the weekend ahead. Always important to kind of get an idea of what's going on in Lewis and Clark athletics, because we do have some events coming up this weekend, which will be super fun, including the opportunity for our student athletes to compete on the home track with another home track and field meet coming up this weekend. Aaron Campbell and the crew going to have different teams at Eldon Fixed Track at Griswold Stadium. So pretty excited about that opportunity to see our teams compete coming up this weekend. We invite you to get in touch with us on social media. You can do so by going to Twitter and Instagram. Our handle on both of those platforms, LC Pioneers. And then, of course, on our website, you can read the latest information about Lewis and Clark athletics as well. The top story of the course of the week has been Christian Peeve of Lewis and Clark men's tennis, named the Northwest Conference Men's Tennis Student Athlete of the Week, second Pioneers men's tennis player to win that award so far this year. And in fact, the first was Riley Vickers, who is primarily Peeve's doubles partner. And those two have been outstanding this year. I want to say somewhere around 7-3 or 8-3 on the season. Lewis and Clark men's tennis is on the road at Pacific Lutheran this weekend. Women's tennis will be home, and they take on Pacific Lutheran with the opportunity to celebrate the seniors on Senior Day with the tennis program. And what's cool, too, is unfortunately the Lewis and Clark Tennis Dome, because of an ice storm that happened earlier this year, collapsed. So that dome has since been removed, and the weather is looking so good for this Saturday that the Pioneers are going to host Pacific Lutheran on the outdoor courts at Lewis and Clark on campus. And based on the research we've been trying to do since we found out that was going to happen, pretty sure this is going to be the first Northwest Conference tennis match on campus uncovered since probably the mid-90s. We're guessing it's around 1995 was the last time that something like this happened. Yeah, I will definitely look on, get the link to the Northwest Conference website into the chat during our break prior to having Jeremy Loew join us. But that's one of the matchups coming up this weekend. You can find the latest schedule at lcpioneers.com and just click on the games link. It's the top black link that you can see there, black outline, games in white, and then right next to that's the live button for PioStream, which is our video streaming service. Baseball is up at Pacific Lutheran as well. They play a 4-game series against the Lutes. Took the last game of the series last week against George Fox, which is a lot of fun to see. And then I mentioned track and field. They are hosting not a spring break, but the Invitational, the last meet of the year that they host at Eldon Fixed Track at Griswold Stadium. And the Northwest Conference Championship for golf is happening in Spokane, Washington. So that's happening this weekend, the final of the 3-match series that determines the Northwest Conference champion. They had the Fall Classic already, they had the Spring Classic, and now they have the championship coming up this weekend as well. And worth noting too, Jessica Cerny had a pretty outstanding performance at the heptathlon at Linfield, kind of a precursor, if you will, to coming up later on this spring, the Northwest Conference Championships for the heptathlon. Cerny did qualify to compete in that coming up. All right, let's take a break. We'll come back and we'll talk to the head athletic trainer at Lewis and Clark, Jeremy Loew. Been with the athletic training program for quite some time and is also an alumnus of Lewis and Clark baseball from the class of 1995. We'll have that conversation when we come back in just a moment on lcpioneers.com live, presented by PioStream.
I'm Ann Bentley. I'm an associate professor of chemistry, and in this research group, I supervise the 2 students working in the Rogers program this summer in our lab. The brown bag experience is a good chance for students to get experience presenting their work that they've done in the lab, especially to an audience that's not technical.
What's intriguing about the brown bag experience is it incorporates all of the Rogers program. So I'm able to hear people in the psychology department and what research they're doing, but it also gives us the opportunity to share our research with the greater science community at Lewis and Clark. And for incoming students, the summer program is really beneficial for getting opportunity in research. So I've had the opportunity for research in the past, but other students may not have the same opportunities. So it's nice to work in a professional lab setting and potentially have the opportunity to publish a paper, which looks really good moving on into doing professional research out in the field.
The students grow a lot during the summer in their ability to learn the techniques and apply the techniques and suggest their own ideas for what could come next and interpret their data. It's just a big, usually if they haven't done research before, they learn a lot in that short period of time.
Welcome back to lcpioneers.com live, presented by PioStream, as we keep you connected with student athletes, coaches, alumni, and different members from throughout the Lewis and Clark College community twice a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays at 11:30 a.m. Pacific time. And now it's been a lot of fun as we've shifted to the twice a week format to have 2 guests per show. And so we are proud and excited to welcome in Jeremy Loew, the head athletic trainer for Lewis and Clark on lcpioneers.com live. Jeremy, thanks for taking time out of your Thursday to join us. And I know that, sports medicine during a pandemic, I'm sure, has looked a lot different than in non-pandemic times. And I want to get your information on that in just a second. But let's start with, head athletic trainer at your alma mater. What was it about the opportunity to come back as someone in the sports medicine department that really kind of latched you back to your alma mater?
Well, thanks, Ryan, for having me. I appreciate the chance to be here. This is my 18th year at Lewis and Clark. So I'd left professional sports, finished graduate school, and kind of wanted to get into college athletics. And I really see myself as kind of a small school kind of guy. I've had opportunities to work at bigger schools and didn't enjoy it. And so I was working across the river at Concordia University, and then a spot at Lewis and Clark opened up, and I jumped at it. And the chance to be with, students that they care every bit as much about their sport as any Division I athlete, and they work just as hard at it. But they have this other piece, that's this academic piece, and these other passions that, I don't know, I really enjoy. At the time we get to spend with students in the training room and really explore the things they're doing outside of sports, it blows me away sometimes.
And I brought this up with Coach Cyrus, who we had prior to your appearance, because I've had discussions with some of our student athletes, and then I've had some other folks who came in from outside the athletics world, but talked about being recruited because they were a former student athlete at the D3 level. And I've even heard something to the effect of like, going into school, I didn't even think of the idea that we'd have, an extensive sports medicine athletic training, staff when I got into college. So let's kind of just go at the basic level. Describe sports medicine, your department, when it comes to what you provide student athletes at Lewis and Clark.
I think at the core of our department, where it's injuries, right? It's injury prevention, injury rehab, and being on scene to take care of injuries as they happen in real time as much as possible. Um, you know, I we do a lot of different things that don't get seen, but probably most visible is how we interact with students and trying to help them get the most out of what their experience is. And they came to Lewis and Clark to play their sport, and they can't do that if they're injured. So we work real hard to make sure that when they are injured, they can recover as fast as possible. And we try to be that link to other medical resources. So even things that aren't injury related, if it's more illness related, getting people the care that they need, they can stay healthy and get the most out of their experience. Like I said, we've got our fingers in some other pots as well, but that's really the core of it. Is we want our students to have a healthy experience. We want them to have an enjoyable experience, and playing as much as possible as part of that.
Jeremy Loew, our guest on lcpioneers.com live, head athletic trainer at Lewis and Clark. And you've been, as you mentioned, part of the sports medicine program for quite a while. I took over as head athletic trainer when Mark Petrock, the longtime head athletic trainer, became the director of physical education and athletics. What is the consistency in the staff in the sports medicine office really provide that you maybe don't get when you're having someone new come in maybe 3 or 4 years? You have all been together for such a long time.
Well, I think the biggest thing is, we share a tiny little office, so we all get along. So we all have to kind of, from a personality standpoint, get along. And I think that helps. And the biggest thing is communication. We need to be able to communicate in a way that because we all have a little bit of oversight with every sport, that no one is left in the dark when it comes to how we deal with our students. So that from one of us to the next, you're going to see some continuity. And each of us has different strengths. Even though we've been together a while, and there's some common threads in how we got to where we are, we all do things a little differently. We've had some different experiences along the way, and that gives us a little bit of diversity of thought as we approach and deal with athletes. And it gives us an opportunity. Each of us can kind of work to our strengths, and none of us work with a lot of ego. So if Tara has an answer that I can't find, it's fine by me. I don't care. As long as the students get the care they need, it doesn't matter who's got the right answer. There's no medals at the end of the year for us.
Let's then discuss the staff. The sports medicine office. Who are your staff? Describe the people who your student athletes, interact with each day.
Tara Boatman has been with us. I think this is her 16th year. She was a student of mine when I worked at Concordia, and then when we had a spot at Lewis and Clark, she's a perfect fit. So we brought her over. And she supervises all of our rehab. She's fantastic and has some great ideas. This year we were really fortunate. We hired Brandon Walcott Ayers on a full-time basis. Brandon had done an internship with us years ago when he was in graduate school, and then worked part-time for us for a couple of years before we sent him off to work for the hated San Francisco Giants. And then he spent a little time at Western Oregon before we had a position, and we were fortunate. He wanted to come back, and we were able to get him back. So that's our full-time staff. We do have a couple part-time people that our students do end up spending some time with, and we're really lucky. We get interns that come over from Pacific University from their graduate program, and they come with some new, fresh ideas and this eagerness to just be hands-on with the athletes, which is great. And then we've got our team doctors that are around 1 or 2 days a week, depending on the time of year. Our sports medicine doctor from OHSU sees probably 5 to 8 kids every week when he comes in. And we can try to do as much as we can in the building. Keep people on campus seems to help.
Not a Giants fan?
Not so much. No, we bleed Dodger blue in our house.
Jeremy Loew, our guest, the head athletic trainer at Lewis and Clark, and as I mentioned, a class of 1995 alumnus, member of the baseball team back in the early 90s. It's kind of almost the same question, just framed at a different time. What was it about the opportunity to compete and be a member as a student athlete at Lewis and Clark?
I'd gone to a small high school in Los Angeles, small private high school, and baseball is a big part of my life. Sports is a big part of my life, and I wanted to be involved. And Lewis and Clark from a social standpoint and an academic standpoint fit exactly what I was looking for. It was not in Los Angeles, but it wasn't so far away I couldn't get home if I really wanted to. And then the opportunity to come up, baseball was an option. I was probably barely good enough to play here, but I was on the team. And Coach Gatto was somebody that, first time I met him, he was just an electric figure that just draws you in. And this was the place I wanted to be as soon as I came up here and visited with my dad in 1995 in the spring, or 1991 in the spring, 30 years ago this year. Met Gatto for the first time, got to see the field and got to see the campus, and I was sold immediately. And Coach Gatto became a big part of my life, and we maintained a friendship after I graduated. It's fantastic.
We have the We Believe project and some of the efforts named after Coach Gatto to renovate the Houston Sports Complex. More information at lcpioneers.com/We Believe. Because Coach had such an impact on so many of his student athletes, I don't know if it was related to him specifically or it's from somewhere else, but when you share a favorite memory, a favorite story from your time as a student athlete, what comes to mind?
There's a lot of them. There's so many different Gattoisms that we have that we still, me and some of my friends that I played with, we still bat them around. But I remember my sophomore year, we make it into the district tournament back in the old NAIA days. We had a district tournament. We're the 8th of 8 teams to sneak in, and then we would be a big banquet before, and so all the coaches get to speak about how great their season was. And so Coach Gatto goes last, and he walks up there and he goes, I don't know what everybody says about parity because we've got the highest ERA and we've got the lowest batting average and the lowest fielding percentage, and we snuck in the back door, but we believe we're going to win and we're going to compete our hearts out. And he kind of like knocked us down 5 pegs and then built us up 10 pegs. And we got knocked out pretty early in that tournament, but we had a great time doing it. So.
You got by the way, a Jeremy Lowe Rocks from Edgard in the Facebook Live comments. So always good to see people giving you props, but it's also well deserved. Let's close with this because I don't know how all y'all have done as much as you've done amidst the pandemic, because for me it has taken a significant toll. I am so impressed by the work that you've done. How have you really had to adjust, be resilient yourself during the course of the pandemic and all of the extra things that you've had to do to keep everyone safe?
The biggest adjustment for us is that we've had to kind of spread out the flow of what we do. Normal day in the training room, we've got 8 tables and we're jumping during practice hours, and we'll, have 15, 20, 25 people kind of coming through for one thing or another, even if it's something simple. And we've had to get down to having 10 people or less in the room at a time with only 4 tables to keep everybody spread out. So that's been a big adjustment, and really kind of making sure that our contact time with our student athletes didn't get us lumped in as a high risk contact, that if somebody did come down with something, that we're not a high risk contact and end up getting quarantined. So really making sure that we're very intentional about our time. We've been really fortunate. We have not had many cases at all within our student athletes, and that's a credit to them for working hard at it. And it's been a learning experience of making plans and learning something new, and then taking the plans, throw them out, and make new plans, and constantly doing that, and just being kind of nimble and ready to pivot, when new information comes along. And the biggest thing we miss is competing. And the fall we didn't get on the sidelines. That's a big part of why I love what I do, is we can be out, inside the ropes, with the athletes, and really share the highs and lows with them. So that we missed, but we're getting some of it in the spring, and we've been fortunate with beautiful spring weather. We're getting a lot of it. So,
well, again, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for all the work that you and your staff have put into. It's tremendous effort. I don't see better teamwork than the work that you've put in, and we really appreciate that. So I want you to know that. Jeremy Lowe, thank you so much for joining us on the show today, and appreciate your time.
Thank you, Ryan. I appreciate the time. Appreciate the accolades. Be well, my friend.
Absolutely. Jeremy Lowe joining us on the show. I've said it a lot to the coaches. In fact, this was in my opinion, a little bit of an oversight. I hadn't thought, hey, we've had Coach Ange, one of our head coaches, on the show before. In fact, I think Coach Ange has joined us twice. And then one day I was sitting there, I was like, wait, why have I not had the head athletic trainer on? And eventually we'll have Tara, and eventually we'll have Brandon on to keep that conversation about sports medicine going, because you cannot run a 19 team, over 350 student athlete program without, as Jeremy talked about, keeping them healthy. And that was super important over the course of the pandemic, more than just the physical injuries, but trying to keep everything going as well. I can't say enough about the work that they've done. They've handled it immensely well, and it's beyond anything that I could imagine, certainly, because this has not been the easiest time for me to navigate. Like he talked about being nimble and being resilient. I have not been able to do it nearly to the degree as most of the staff at Lewis and Clark, so I'm very, very thankful for them. It's been a lot of fun. Shauna Cyrus, a lot of good things coming from the softball program, and certainly Jeremy Loew and the sports medicine athletic training staff at Lewis and Clark, who keeps everyone healthy and going. It was a lot of fun. I like this show, and thank you, Edgar, and everyone else who took the time. I saw Lewis and Clark volleyball was in there. It's always good to see everybody interacting with the show as well. And we'll be back next week. We have more shows for you. Don't have our guest list assembled yet, but of course, bookmark lcpioneers.com/live for the full schedule. And then, and I should have this on this graphic, lcpioneers.com/game day is also the best way to find out the games coming up this week. Like I mentioned, Northwest Conference Championship for golf. You have track and field at home on the Eldon Fix track at Griswold Stadium, so that's super exciting. And then the softball and baseball series up at Pacific Lutheran, as is men's tennis. And then you have women's tennis at home for Senior Day against Pacific Lutheran on the outdoor courts for the first time since, quite honestly, when Jeremy Loew graduated, 1995, we're pretty sure it was the mid-90s, was the last time there was an uncovered on-campus outdoor court match at Lewis and Clark. Pretty exciting stuff for the Pioneers tennis team. So stick around for that. It's coming up next Tuesday. We'll have you back on the show with us on lcpioneers.com live Tuesday at 11:30 a.m. Pacific time. And until then, you can watch all of our past shows inside the fan zone on our website or at youtube.com/lcpios. Until we see you again next week, have a great weekend. I'm Ryan Goff for Shauna Cyrus and Jeremy Loew. Thanks for having fun with us. We'll talk to you again soon for more of the show. Goodbye, everybody.
I think everyone should take intro to chemistry because the chemistry department here is phenomenal. Everyone I've known has had a good experience with everyone in that department, so I think it's a worthwhile course to take.
What is one class that everyone should take at Lewis and Clark? I really enjoyed Education in a Complex World. You kind of get to discuss all the issues that exist within education today, and you get to kind of explore that by going to classrooms firsthand and volunteering with children, which I thought was a really wonderful experience.
One class that everybody should take at Lewis and Clark is anything with Kundai Chirindo. I think he definitely changed how I thought about rhetoric and media studies and just education in general.
For me, it was international affairs, just intro to international affairs, because I think it really gives a good perspective on important issues around the world.